call this meeting to order. We're going to start this meeting with a moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I don't think we need to do roll call or anything like that, but the three people sitting here are the actual committee members that were appointed by our Borough Council President. So we're just going to jump right into the presentation from Scott and Micah. I'm going to ask you guys to take the lead, walk us through what we have here, and enlighten us.
Well, what I'd like to do, Mr. Chairman, if the committee doesn't mind, is give you some general comments on the 2018 budget, followed by some general comments on, I guess, my projections or expectations for the 2019 budget. Give you an update as to where we stand in terms of our various audits that are going on at the present time, and then we can walk through the packet we presented you tonight, just to give you, kind of hit the highlights, give you an overview of what's in it. Having no expectation that you're going to digest all this at tonight's meeting, but that you can review it at your leisure and come back to us with questions.
Fair enough.
So, to begin, the 2018 budget, there's some data in here as to where we stand to date, but in general terms, we're finding revenues that are overstated. We're finding expenses that are known expenses that were not accounted for in the budget, and known expenses that were underestimated in the budget. So, as you sit at your kitchen table with your checkbook, looking at your household budget, this, of course, is not a good recipe. Council has already had to deal with a number of unbudgeted items over the course of the last few months. That's something that's probably going to continue in different areas. I fully expect that we will overspend the 2018 budget.
Will we overspend our revenues?
Oh, yes. So that's 2018 in a nutshell so far. 2019 forecast, as I sit here today, I will have to foreshadow what I think 2019's budget's going to look like, and that is it's going to be smaller than 2018's. I don't think there will be a department that doesn't have its 2019 budget smaller than its 2018 budget. And I think the employee headcount in 2019 will be smaller than 2018. Our goal in developing the 2019 budget, and there is a schedule for that included in your packets, will be to have as accurate as possible. No budget is ever 100% accurate. A budget is a plan. It can change during the course of a year, but to have it be as accurate as possible, especially when dealing with known quantities. We will be submitting a budget to council, and we'll get into that when we go through the packet, that will be at or below the 30 mil cap. As for audits, let's talk about audits for a minute. The DCED audit is just about done. It's our expectation to be able to present the audit report to council at its May meeting. The library audit is underway simultaneously. And we are currently in the middle of 2 years of liquid fuels fund audits, 2016 and 2017. They will be wrapping up on or about May 1st.
So they didn't come out for 2 years? Is that, or are they just behind? Or
They frequently do 2 years at a time.
2 years, okay.
Yeah, that's not a time.
Okay.
So if you have no questions about that, how about we walk through the packet?
How about the other audit, our financial audit, or the DCED?
That's the DCED audit, yeah. The first item in your packet is basically where we stand to date on taxes collected, general fund revenues, expenses, the TAN fund. There's some charts here. All revenues is chart 1. Tax revenues is chart 2. Now these are budget, these are not year to date. Okay. Tax revenues and where tax revenues are spent. Administration and police. There's a copy of a memo in here that we provided to you in January for new council members to be able to familiarize themselves with the various funds that make up the budget and what the purpose is of those funds and how they're used. Joan, our treasurer, is here tonight. She was kind enough to put that together.
Question for
Way
you.
back in January. Yes.
So it's your state highways, we get those funds in March, did we get those for this year?
We
Yes.
did.
And that was with a slight increase, I think I read in the paper,
Yes.
but a very slight increase for us.
Yep. Everybody got a slight increase.
So ours was very slight.
Yes. The next item in the packet is what I was alluding to earlier, which is an annual schedule for the finance department on various financial metrics and requirements throughout the year, including audits, various financial reports, the budget process, which you see will be starting soon, pretty seriously in May and June. Our expectation is to have an initial draft of the 2019 budget for council's initial review in September.
Sorry, it's so early. I'm just sorry.
We'll come back to council with a preliminary 2019 budget in October. November will consist of revisions and public hearings, and then council adopts the final budget and the tax levy ordinance each December. The next item in the packet is an executive summary provided by Keystone Collections Group, not to be confused with Keystone Municipal Services, two completely different companies, not affiliated with one another, about the earned income tax. This is data specific to Morrisville Borough, including their projections. This may have to be considered by council at some point to generate alternative tax revenue. If you look on page 3, you'll see the number of taxpayers in Morrisville Borough 1,667 are already paying the earned income tax,
I'm one of them.
and that money is staying in the jurisdiction in Pennsylvania in which they work.
Do you have a number to compare that to of how many taxpayers we have?
It says it over here,
Yeah.
3845. So it's about, what, half of them?
And that 1,667 EIT, already EIT paying taxpayers are paying $280,957 a year based on 2017 data from the Pennsylvania Department of Revenue. This is 2017 data from the Pennsylvania Department of Revenue. The bugger about the earned income tax is that when you don't levy it, but your people are already paying it and that money is going to other towns, it's very frustrating because you would think that the money would stay in the community in which you live. Unfortunately, that's not the case, unless we levy it. I'm the last person on earth who would recommend levying new taxes, especially when we're trying to do things to spur economic development. But we're faced with a real budgetary challenge, where either we have to consider serious public policy changes in the way we do business, or we need to introduce new revenue for the budget.
Or a little of both.
Or a mixture of both, that's correct. So we'll let you review that. Behind that, the next item in the packet is a summary from Keystone of where all of our already EIT paying taxpayers are paying EIT taxes. You'll see that number totals $268,188. That's because this report is from 2016, whereas the executive summary in front of it is from 2017. So it's about a $12,000 change from 16 to 17.
And this isn't factoring in people that live in like Falls and work here that it would stay here for, because Falls doesn't have it.
Right.
So there's actually an additional benefit on top of that this isn't even encompassing.
That's correct. To give you an example of what implementing an earned income tax might look like, the next item in your packet is a presentation that Morrisville Borough did last year. They did a town hall meeting when they were introducing the option of implementing an earned income tax, which they subsequently did at the full 1%. So this is a copy of that town hall presentation that they did.
And I guess they're able to do it at 1% because the school district isn't taking their half of it?
That's correct.
Okay.
But would we have any control whether the school district decided to implement it and take half?
No. Which is, from some people's perspective, another argument for delaying it is to dissuade the school district from enacting it at all. So that's the Morrisville Borough presentation. They did enact it effective this year. Behind that is a copy of their enabling legislation, the ordinance adopting it. Remember, you can't just make up any taxes you want. As a Pennsylvania municipality, you can only enact various taxes that the legislature has authorized you through the Local Tax Enabling Act to implement. You've got a menu of choices and you've got to pick which ones are best for your community. But that's a copy of their ordinance. The next item in the packet is a list of FAQs from Ben Salem Township, which has also implemented the earned income tax back, I believe it was in 2016. So because Keystone is the EIT tax collector for all of Bucks County, the FAQs kind of apply to everybody. So we're giving you Ben Salem's just as an example of the various questions you may have or you may get from your constituents about the implications of enacting an earned income tax. the extent of your packet,
Good stuff.
the extent of our presentation, unless you have questions.
Yeah, Justin, I'm sure Justin has questions. There's one more thing.
We haven't had a chance to read the Keystone thing. Do they have, I guess, what, if we enacted it, what an average amount people would pay is?
It's up to 1%. That's assuming the
I
school
think
district
you're
doesn't
asking what the
kick.
average burden
Per
would be
person,
on
yeah.
a taxpayer. Yeah, we don't have that kind of data.
Isn't it 1% up to a cap, though? Up to a monetary cap?
I don't think so. I think
Okay.
there's a floor if you meet certain conditions,
Okay.
but I don't know that there's a cap. Off the top of my head, I would have to
Okay.
research that.
This,
One thing about an EIT is it tends to be softer on senior citizens because it's
unemployed.
not based on all income, it's only based on earned income.
Yep. It still protects the people that are struggling. Give me 1 second. So Justin, to answer your question, about $168 per person. Just the average of the 280,000 divided by the 1,667 people. On page 3. That's what's currently being paid by people in Morrisville. Which I'm gonna round to about 40% of total people working. Okay.
So there's a lot to consume here, a lot to digest. Take your time, review this. As you have questions, feel free to contact me. Or I can also get you in touch with Keystone Collections or PSAB. And we'll address any questions you have. I don't think this is the last time we'll be talking about the earned income tax.
No, not at all. So, one question is, you said that come May, I believe you're gonna be ready to present on, the audit,
Yes.
okay?
The formal report will be available
Okay.
to council at your May meeting.
Okay, so I believe our next meeting is scheduled for September 27th. I think we're probably gonna need a meeting before then, because come September, we're gonna be deep into the budget.
Yes.
From the other members, any suggestion of when to meet again?
July. I would do it in between this one and then September. Then the beginning.
I was actually even thinking June, so we can,
Just
so we
as
can
soon as
really
the audit comes out, we want to
take a look at the audit and sit down with it and go through it piece by piece.
Okay.
Because that'll give us a
That's
lot to
fine.
look at.
I don't want to be a gloomy Gus, but I don't think the audit will be without findings. So,
So June it is.
So we'll pick a date in June, okay? All right, so before we go any further, I'm gonna ask if there's anybody in attendance that would like to make public comment. I'm gonna move on to the public comment section.
Thank you. Jane Berger, 90 West Maple Avenue. I'm wondering if your discussions, if you would also look at the municipal services tax. That's the one that, say $1 a week, but it's $52 a year. That is a tax on the individuals who work within the borough, and not necessarily the residents. Several years ago, we looked at it, and for some reason, council didn't go forward. But at that time, I think it was about 85% of the individuals that worked in the borough did not live here. Now, those statistics may be too low or too high now, but as ballpark, it showed clearly the majority of those that work in the borough were not our residents. The largest employer at the time was the school district. I believe the second and the third were the Bridge Commission, and then Toll Brothers. And we know there's a very fine teachers and the folks in the school district, not very many of them live within the borough. So I'm just wondering if you would look at that as well, because there are borough employees, or I'm sorry, borough residents that work in other municipalities that have that tax, and that stays in those municipalities as well, where if we had that tax, at least for those, a smaller number of those residents that work in areas that have the tax, I believe that money would revert back to the borough as well. So I'm just wondering if you take a look at that as a possible source of revenue and an alternative. I think there's a caveat that 25% of those funds has to go to,
Please.
I think it's to the
Yeah,
police
yeah.
department, but the rest, how you divide that up amongst your municipal needs is, I think, worth looking into. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I think the commenter was referring to the LST, the local services tax. And also, just so you're aware, if you're not already, having had a recent meeting with the Delaware River Joint Toll Bridge Commission, they're actually planning on moving a sizable amount of their employees out of their current Morrisville location and to their new headquarters.
Maybe they'll still do payroll in Morrisville.
So the staff based in Morrisville will be much smaller and is primarily going to be toll takers and maintenance personnel.
Okay. Anyone else?
Debbie Smith, 221 West Maple Ave. That service tax you're talking about is something that myself and my husband do pay in the falls. I think it's $52 a year to stay in there. I don't know, is it something that would come back? I have no idea how that works the same as the earned income tax. I've never heard anyone talk about
The
that.
local services tax would stay entirely here.
Okay, so even though we worked there, that would then finally come back here?
Yeah, because it's based on every resident who lives, every taxpayer who lives in the jurisdiction.
Okay.
Are you talking about the LST or the
The service tax.
service tax?
Yeah, service
That
tax.
comes back here
That-
if it's,
The employer collects it, it comes to the
Okay.
home municipality, yeah.
so just like the earned income tax?
So
The earned
what-
income tax, yeah.
Well, except it comes back to where you live, if it's levied.
Oh, so what, that's all.
But they both do, is that what you're saying?
Right, but- Well, if we don't levy the earned income tax
Right,
stays
right.
wherever
Gotcha,
you pay it.
gotcha.
But that's also works with that service tax also? Is
The
that what you're
local
saying?
services tax, where, if you're a Morrisville Borough resident and Morrisville enacts the local services tax, wherever you work, your employer deducts that and it comes back
That
to
also
Morrisville
must then
Borough.
come back
Yeah, I
here.
pay that
But
too.
it's like $50 a year,
It's a-
52,
yeah,
yeah.
52.
yeah.
I pay it too where I live, so.
Well, and yeah, and based on the data they have for the people that would be eligible to pay in general, quickly assess what the impact would be of $52. Times 52 would be $86,000, so it would be about $1 million.
What do we have?
$1.5 million.
What do we have? I know as we go further with the budget, more specifics will be coming out. Something that I just want to mention, I did mention in several budgets as we go, with all the things that we are trying to do with improvements in town and grants, we did put in several years ago the match in the recreation fund for grants. We changed the wording so that it wouldn't be just for the open space one. It was changed later over, it was any grants that we would put out, we would be able to put that money in. So there's a mill that gets put in there every year. Came in handy when it came time to do the MRI of property. Outside of being short, we found out that the engineering costs weren't compensated for, which is one of those unbudgeted items that the manager's now talking about tonight that we have to come up with the money for. But in that line, I would like to see that we can get that, however way it needs to be done, voted so that it stays locked in that line item and it doesn't get muted whatever's left back into the budget, so that it will accumulate like your capital reserve does for specific things. Only for the fact that when you're going through several different grants, which we are at this point, that money would need to accumulate there in order to use that for those purposes. So to make sure that it stays there and we can see how much we actually have as we're going along. I'd like to look into find out how we go about doing that to make sure that that's locked in that line item for that specific purpose. Thanks.
And that makes sense, Debbie, and what I'll say about that is if we're doing things as we should, and we're applying for a grant one year, and we're keeping it to the side because we don't get it, and we're applying for it the next year, we should always have that money aside for when we do get it, to your point.
Right.
There is a line item in the recreation fund.
So then it's just a matter
Just
of
accumulates each
setting a
year.
policy to make sure that it doesn't get used for something else, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so that it specifically sits in there, because each year you're only gonna see that 1 mil, and you don't see where it's actually accumulated. So if you have like 20,000, let's say, left over out of that 62,000 put in there for the mill, then it should be that 62,000 for the
Plus the
following
mill.
year. Right, just like you would do with your capital reserve,
Got it.
so that you know what you have.
Are you talking about opening up a separate account, like
That's
capital reserve?
That's how I didn't know how that was done, how that was locked in like that, so that was used for
Yeah,
that.
like right now, it's showing on the finance report up here, and then each year I take the mill and add it, and it accumulates, and when it's expended, it'll come out of that same line item. Capital reserve, we have a special bank account,
Okay.
for capital reserve.
Okay,
So, I mean, it's up to you guys whether you want to separate that into a special account.
okay, maybe something that we
Yeah.
could talk about to make sure that that happens, so we would have that.
Makes sense?
Okay, thank you.
Plus, if I may,
Sure.
speaking about grants and required matching funds, one positive note about the budget is there was money budgeted for our match requirements for the various grants. There's like 3, I think, on the MR Writer
Good.
project. The only problem is we didn't budget for things like engineering or inspections, but, so.
But yeah, we did do it.
But there is money in the budget for our match requirements.
Yeah, good.
Mr. Nay, thanks.
Yes, Dave Nay, 187 Center Street. Just to dovetail a little bit off of what Debbie was asking, she was talking about the LST. Regarding the actual EIT, I work in Ben Salem, and, you know, if we enacted an EIT, how would that affect somebody like me? Just for clarification's sake, since I work in Ben Salem, I pay the EIT in Ben Salem.
If we enacted the EIT, the amount of money you're currently paying that Ben Salem Township is enjoying will come to Morrisville Borough.
Excellent.
Or if you pay more to Ben Salem, say you pay 2%, then whatever percent we pay comes to us, and we put it comes to us, and the rest of it is Ben Salem, so your amount
Above and
won't
beyond
change.
what we would take.
Yeah, if they're at 1% and we levy it at 0.5%, the 0.5% will come back to Morrisville Borough, your home municipality. The other half would stay in Ben Salem.
Okay, thank you.
Kathy Panzito, 401 Hillcrest Avenue. Before you get off of the local earned income tax, is it, we have to consider the people in New Jersey. Are those employers we have a reciprocal between New Jersey and Pennsylvania state taxes. Are all employers in New Jersey forced to take that money out?
There is a provision in that executive summary that specifically addresses out-of-state and New Jersey. I believe it's the bottom of page 2.
Well, we don't have that.
Pennsylvania and New Jersey used to have reciprocity, and then about a year ago there was a war over it, and I can't remember if Governor
I
Christie
think the war
killed
in
it or
New
not.
Jersey's trying to break it so
Right.
that the Pennsylvania residents
Right, and
will pay New
unfortunately,
Jersey
as I sit
tax.
here right now, I can't remember off the top of my head what the outcome was of that, but,
They extended.
It was a
Oh, they did
stay,
extend
but
it?
it's
Okay.
gonna come back.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You would know, Kathy, right? Or you please call.
Because as you know, under the Sterling Act, if you work in the city of Philadelphia, the city keeps your money.
Yeah.
We never get that back.
Yeah, they strong arm.
So that was my next
We
question.
could look into it for New Jersey.
Is that also noted on there, all the people that travel to Philadelphia?
Yes.
Okay, so we're not quite sure if New Jersey employers.
I can't give you an answer on New Jersey right now. If you want to read page 2 of that executive summary, I believe it addresses out-of-state, Delaware and New Jersey.
Can someone show me page 2?
We have an extra.
I mean, and my next question
We
is,
have
this
your
is what's
picture.
near and dear to my heart. As a source of revenue, And it's crazy, I think, that we have a hotel here that doesn't have a local tax. I can't think of any place. I've said this before. Council is to legislate. You have to go to the boroughs, you have to go to associations. You have to go and break that law and be proactive and start returning it. Since they've been sitting there, what?
I think when you mentioned that before, you also mentioned possibly fireworks.
Me for fireworks?
Do a similar thing.
The fireworks store.
I couldn't care about the fireworks store, that's where it's
Hotel tax.
located. You
No,
have
I-
a hotel.
But as a legislative thing.
Oh, yeah, we saw what happened to them. Now Pennsylvania can buy fireworks and we can put an additional tax. Everybody's going broke. The feds are going broke. The state's going broke. That was the foresight years ago. So my only question is, you know, what can you do and be proactive within your borough association and all the laws and go and change that? You have something sitting there, just say 20 rooms a day. 365 days a year, pay that tax. These are people who are traveling, they're for work, they're here to enjoy family. I cannot think of a hotel I've been to in the last 20 years where I've not seen a local tax on it. So if it's against your current law, you need to legislate and change that law. So that's what I'd like to see. You guys go to your borough and everybody legislative and change that law. If not, you know.
Is that what they call them, 511 taxes, Kathy?
And they keep saying that it's illegal. I've wanted since day one.
Yeah.
That's what's bringing businesses to make stuff. People are under the impression a business comes to Morrisville. Well, what do they really pay? They pay for services they get if they have to do certain things, but they pay their real estate tax bill. That's something that brings in money to the budget.
Thank you.
And it doesn't cost the taxpayers.
Anyone else? All right, at this time we'll close public comment. We do not have any old business since this is the first meeting of this committee. There are no minutes to approve. New business, I mentioned another meeting date. I actually like to set that up and give that information so we can have it advertised. Let's take a look. We did say June. I would like to recommend.
The borough calendar.
Yep, I do have that. Tuesday the 26th. Tuesday, June 26th.
That's on today. There's nothing on the borough calendar for that day?
Nope. It's between, it's right in between the planning commission and the beautification committee.
It's a good place to be.
Alright.
At the same time, 7 o'clock?
At the same time, 7 o'clock would be great. And what I'll do is I'll send out an agenda ahead of time. I think the guts of it, I would like to see be the audit and get some information and talk about some of the controls we're putting in place to avoid these things from happening again, if possible. It would be nice for the public to know what we're trying to do to clean it up. And are there any other new business you guys have you want to bring up? Because, I mean, this is a lot of information. I would also say that part of it will be, and I wouldn't wait until then, if you got questions for Scott on the packet, please send it over to him and Micah. Let them get you your answers. Would we be able to put this on the website for people to view?
We will. It'll be on public portal probably tomorrow.
Awesome. That'd be great. That makes, look at how happy he is. Look at that smile. I just made his day.
He's got a button for it.
So that'd be good. So then if the public has any questions, they're free to reach out to me or anybody on the committee, and we could manage what we can, and anything we're not sure about, we'll be coming to you, sir. I think that will do it unless anybody else has any new business they'd like to bring up. Any announcements?
I'm just trying to wrap my head around all this right
motion to close.
So moved.
Homework.
Thank you, guys.
Have a good evening.
It's awesome.
Enjoy your
Good
night.
night, everyone. We'll talk to me tomorrow about this matching grant.
Okay.
Right.
Time before you go downstairs.
Sure. I'm already on hold for someone ahead of you.
Oh, okay.
Your second line.
2 seconds, yes. It's a very, very basic.